it's interesting because Putin called me, and we don't talk as much as we used to, and it is fun when he calls. And here's the thing about him, he has a very subtle sense of humor. And I appreciate that because I'm more gregarious and Latin, and that's why it always worked as a friendship, because friendships need to kind of have those opposite components. And his clan is from St. Petersburg, and I know more people in Moscow, but we do have, certainly there's an overlap. And he called me and said, I'm going to have Tucker on. And I said, go. I said, you know what? I said, do a whole thing. I said, give him a dissertation. And he goes, no. I go, do it. And he did it. That's for the people that think that I really know Putin. That there are people that watch your show that think like Russia pays me. Because I've questioned our policy, our dedicated policy of nuclear war. The American defense establishment's dedicated policy of more nuclear war. I watched the interview. Favorite part was when Putin was like, hey, he said to Tucker, he goes, hey, thank God you didn't get into the CIA, because Putin doesn't respect anyone who doesn't have real power. And what's cool about that moment is Putin actually respects like the CIA, because he said, they were always our enemies, but he goes, a job's a job. And he kind of smiles, because if all you fight against is the CIA, you kind of have a respect for them. Which with Putin, his entire life, he's been fighting against this one group of people, right? And the way he said that to Tucker, he's got, Putin doesn't care about people in the media. He doesn't, I don't think he really respects the media. This is not, so when he said that, he's like, oh, thank God you didn't get into the CIA. He was basically like, I would have respected you if you were here to poison me. Because that's the type of guy he is. And that's the thing. Here's why Putin is, even though he is murders people, here's what's interesting about Putin. He's not on TikTok. This is what we like about Putin. He's a relic of another age. Let's say that about him. He's an armchair philosopher. He's grandpa. If, grandpa had hundreds of nuclear weapons. He's a relic. He's not really interested in the new media landscape. We can say that. That's not, he's not interested in that. What Putin orients himself from his position. He's the first answer was 30 minutes. He goes, this is why I believe what I believe. Is it junk? Was he filibustering? Is it whatever? None of that matters, because this is the guy, this is his perspective. You don't live in Russia. So the reality of the situation is my interest is that America doesn't go to war with Russia in a capacity with nuclear weapons. And my interest is that America doesn't instigate a wider war in that part of the world that becomes a war that we're fighting. This is my instinct. This is not a veneration of his worldview per se, although there are certain things he says, which I completely get it. And there's certain things he says where I go, okay, I was a debate guy. I know kind of what he's doing. But that moment was my favorite, when he kind of has that aw shucks moment, because the fun of his life is over, by the way. The fun of his, like he's at the top of the mountain. It's very lonely. He's got the big desk. But I'm not comparing myself to Putin. I wish that if I was on Ozempic and it really worked, perhaps. But no, what basically the thing about Putin is at this point, he's only living for Russia, or what he thinks Russia is. Like his friends are all older. They're all dying. The excitement of his life, being a spy, climbing the ranks, fucking the women, killing the people, your life almost being taken all the time, that's kind of over. That's over. It's now become, now he's, of course, trying to outrun these coups. That's why the Prigozhin thing, he probably felt alive again for the first time. He's like, oh, I got to kind of take this plane out of Moscow. He probably felt alive. He said, this feels like the old, I guarantee you, At some point to one of his friends, he said something like, well, it feels like the old days. Feels like the old day. Because he's had absolute power over there for a while. And he's gets boring. And that's why people are like, this interview's boring. That's what everyone said. It's boring. I don't like it. It's not fun. That was the critique of the interview. It's boring. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's boring. Where's the back and forth? Where's the yelling? I want them to yell at each other. Yeah, it's a little dry. It's a little dry, but that's what it is. What do you think Putin, like all these people, this is what's interesting about the QAnon cult. The QAnon people, again, not all wrong. We know that. But they're wildly speculative about most things. And they're just downright insane about others. That there are body doubles, people have died, but they've been replaced. JFK Jr. is coming back. But by the way, you want to talk about if JFK Jr. is alive and he comes back and he runs with Michelle Obama, it's over. It will be over. But what I mean by the QAnon cult is that politics by its very nature is boring. I think the hardest thing for us in our society to wrap our heads around is that there is a banality to the evil that we see in the world. It is not nearly as exciting as we think it's ancient blood cults and shape-shifting lizards and all the things, but what it really is the cold marble floors of a bank in like Geneva. It's the high heels of a woman walking across the cold marble floors of a bank in Geneva. It's a very short phone call on a line that people assure each other isn't being tapped. It's a lunch where people are very vague about their intentions, but there's an underlying discomfort. There is a banality to it. That's where, obviously, the phrase, the banality of evil. It's what and we just aren't built like that. So much of American culture has been imagined by Hollywood in spurts of 2 hours and hours on TV, or half hours even. Storylines that have beginning, middle, and end, and they are filled with intrigue. And it's not to say that there isn't intrigue in the world. It's not to say that things aren't interesting, but that's really what it is. It's not these, it's this guy's talking about czars. He's talking about Vladimir being this guy being baptized. And this is like the greatest, one of the other great moments is Tucker's like, where are we now? And Putin's like, 1500s. He's like, 1500s. You know, you will fall asleep. That is most of the things where people are being killed. If you were to get a full accounting of them, you would go to sleep. This is not an episode of a show you like. This is not White Lotus, where at the end of 8 episodes, we're like, who kills who? White Lotus, you know the body's there. It's in episode 1, so you know it's all heading somewhere in episode 8. But if I were to sit down, and not that I would do it, but if a scholar were to explain to you the Israel-Palestine conflict or Russia-Ukraine, you'd be in bed. You'd be in bed. You're killing each other. Wait, what? Prince Philip? Vladimir being baptized, the Cossacks or whatever, it's boring. And I think people just have this idea, and you could see there were certain moments in the Putin interview, because my interest isn't politics, it's always the human angle. There was just certain moments, and that was really one of them, where Putin's like, a job's a job. And the way he said that, you know, he was basically saying that was the fun of my life. That was the excitement of my life. The funnest part of when you're a comedian, a lot of times, is when you're running around open mics, not knowing what will happen. And you have all these people, and you're all on the same level, and you're all running around eating slices of pizza, and you're all broke, and you're all trying to figure out how to be a comedian. Not to say that you don't find fun throughout your career. You do. But it changes. There's more pressure. There are expectations. Sacrifices are greater. They're more real. In the very beginning, you sacrifice almost nothing. The expectations are very low. You're having a lot of fun. I think in Putin's world, when he was a spy and he didn't know that the future of Russia is resting on his shoulders in his mind, he had a lot more fun. It was a lot more fun. And you could see that when he goes, they were always our enemies, but a job is a job. He's like, without them, what are we? What are we? What are we? He has a respect for the enemy. He does not respect media. He does not respect interview. He does not care. In the beginning, he goes, are we having a show? We're going to have a talk. Because if we're going to have a talk, I'm going to talk for 30 minutes. You're going to be bored. Some of your viewers will tune out. I don't care. I don't respect you and I don't respect them because I'm one of the very few people on the planet that has a nuclear arsenal. I respect those people. Just like when he said, I don't speak to Biden, but our agencies talk. We have communication. They say to me that nuclear test is not about you. I say the same thing to them. Our agencies talk. They talk. So seeing the kind of light, his eyes lit up only a few times, but during the interview when he said, yeah, they were always our enemies, but a job's a job, you could tell. And I felt, dare I say, oh no, they're coming for me now if I say it. Dare I say, I felt a little sorry for him. Because he's locked away in that palace. He's locked away in the palace. And he's basically got, in his mind, the history of the Russian state on his shoulders. You know? And it's not that much fun, probably. He's not having that much fun. And then for that second, he remembered, back when it was fun, me and the guys, people are trying to kill us. We're trying to kill them. We're trying to turn assets. They're trying to turn us. It's a deadly game, but it's their game. It's their game. And he goes, yeah, job's a job. He respects that. There was something interesting to me about that. I'm familiar with his rationale for the Ukraine war. I didn't need to know that. I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with most of it. His history lesson in the beginning obviously came as a little bit of a surprise. I don't know all of that. But I kind of know exactly why his worldview. I'm aware of it. But the human moments that dripped out where he goes, yeah, it was we had fun. A job's a job. They were always our enemy. We were always going against them.